issues related to online security and privacy. Can you tell me what are risks that I have when I get online?
Yeah, you have a number of different ways that you're transferring information, which may be intentional or it might be unintentional. And so when you're using a web browser, for example, and you transfer this information to a website, it can store something like a cookie in your browser, which has little bits of information in it that potentially other sites could access. So you want to be aware of what the default settings are in your web browser and determine how much of that you want to allow. Other things like your social media profile, where you put a lot of personal information and make it accessible to other people. Sometimes you can use that to log into another website and it can get access to some of that information as well. So you want to be careful about who you're permitting to have access and how much of that information you're putting in. There's other things like when you install software. Of course, you want to be careful about the source where it's coming from, the apps, and what the intentions are that they might have around providing that information to you.
How could this risky behavior compromise my security?
Well, there's a few different ways. So I just mentioned software. Of course, if you install some software on your computer and it has malicious code in it, that might permit somebody else to have access to your files, for example. But the information that we are providing, this could also, if somebody gets access to it, allow them to trick you into doing certain things. And so, for example, you hear a lot about phishing in the news, and this is a case where you might receive an email from somebody, and maybe it looks trustworthy to you if you're not necessarily paying close attention to it. And you click on a link and it will bring you to a website that maybe looks like your bank. And so what they're trying to do is trick you into giving them information perhaps about your financial accounts. And so this is something that you would want to be cautious of.
That sounds dangerous. What should I do to protect my information security?
I would say it's a good idea to always reflect on the information you're providing and ask yourself some questions. So you want to look at the sources of what you're working with here, whether it's a software application where it's being provided from, or let's suppose it's an online service that you sign up for. It's a good idea to ask, who is this organization? What kinds of policies do they have in place about how they store your data? Are they within some kind of legislation that would require them to take certain precautions? And if you get a good sense of what these organizations are doing, then you might make a determination that it's okay to trust them.
Sounds better. Can you give me some final tips on how to protect my information?
Yeah, I think there's a number of habits that you can put in place or routines that you might change. One of those, for example, would be around passwords. If you use the same password over and over on different sites and somebody gets access to it, of course, that opens you up to problems in all of these sites. So if you use something like a password manager, such as KeePassXC or Bitwarden, these will help you generate passwords for different sites and keep track of them in a secure way. And so that can reduce that kind of risk. There are other things that you might want to do when you reflect on the types of online services that you're using. For example, let's suppose you use a word processor to collaborate with other people. There are some that will provide that same type of a service, but they will encrypt the information. So what you're using doesn't stand as much of a risk of being accessed by somebody else. When you install software, of course, you want to be careful about the sources we mentioned. But there are some other things that increasingly people will use: virtual private networks, so a VPN. This can help protect you against surveillance. When you're using the VPN, it makes it appear as if you're connecting to the internet from somewhere else than where you actually are. And frequently, these use encryption so that the information you're transferring will be more difficult for somebody to read. You might also consider having a backup strategy. So in case somebody does get access to your files, at least you can restore them. And one of the ways that you might do that is to look into things like secure cloud backup services, which are just automatically backing up your files in the background. if you do something like that, it would be important to verify that they are zero access, so that even the company themselves cannot access the files that you're backing up. And you can do that on your own computer as well. Most computers now will allow you to encrypt the file system, or you can install programs to help you do that. So these are some of the routines that you can develop to help